The envelope arrived on a cold October morning, slipping through the mail slot with a sound that felt louder than it should have. San Francisco's fog pressed low against the windows, wrapping Pacific Heights in gray silence. The city looked suspended, as if holding its breath. Sophia Lawrence stood at her kitchen island, stirring black coffee in a chipped ceramic mug. Tiny crayon hearts decorated one side, drawn by 3 small hands years ago. The pink one was Aria's, bold strokes, uneven but confident. The blue belonged to Kai, precise, measured, deliberate. Rowan's green heart wobbled in places, imperfect and innocent. She traced them absently while listening to the sounds that grounded her. Plastic bricks clicking together. A pencil scratching against paper. A soft, off-key hum drifting across the living room. Her children were exactly where they always were. Aria, bold and impatient, crouched on the rug, building a Lego fortress with the intensity of someone planning a conquest. Her dark hair fell forward as she worked, bottom lip caught between her teeth. She was the firstborn by 2 minutes, and she'd carried that weight her entire life, protective, fierce, uncompromising. At 4 years old, she already questioned everything, challenged everyone, and refused to accept answers that didn't satisfy her curiosity. Kai sat nearby, ruler aligned perfectly on a sketch pad, drawing repeating geometric patterns with quiet concentration. Where Aria demanded the world bend to her will, Kai observed it first, calculated its patterns, then navigated with precision. He spoke less than his siblings, but when he did, his words carried weight. Even now, his brow furrowed as he adjusted angles, seeking perfection in symmetry. Rowan pushed a toy truck back and forth, humming to himself, blissfully unaware of anything beyond the carpet beneath his knees. He was the softest of the 3, quick to laugh, quick to cry, quick to forgive. He loved things that moved, trucks, trains, wind-up toys, and could spend hours lost in repetitive motion, finding comfort in predictability. Sophia watched them longer than necessary. These 3, her entire world, born too early, too small, too fragile. Doctors had prepared her for the worst. Nurses whispered statistics when they thought she couldn't hear. Yet here they were, alive, healthy, thriving. Proof that sometimes miracles don't announce themselves with trumpets. They arrive in tiny breaths, in steady heartbeats, in the quiet defiance of survival. Then she reached for the envelope. Thick, cream-colored, expensive without trying to be, embossed in black and gold with the crest she knew too well. Blackwood Dynamics. Her pulse didn't spike. It used to. Years ago, that name alone could tighten her chest, send adrenaline flooding her system, make her hands shake. But restraint had been learned the hard way, in hospital hallways and courtrooms, in nights where panic had been replaced by survival, where vulnerability had been forged into something harder, sharper, unbreakable. She slid a letter opener beneath the flap. The sound was clean, final. Inside was an invitation. The Apex Gala. October 28th. Grand Atrium. Black tie. Philanthropy dressed up as influence. Power pretending to be generosity. On the back, written in a hand she would recognize anywhere, was a message. Thought you might enjoy seeing what real success looks like. Front row seat, dress appropriately. D. Sophia laughed once. Short, sharp, controlled. She set the invitation down and looked at her children again. 3 heartbeats she had dragged into this world at 32 weeks. 3 lives she had fought for while their father negotiated billion-dollar deals across time zones. 3 children born while she bled alone in an operating room, surrounded by strangers in masks who worked with clinical efficiency to save them all. Tonight he would meet them. Not as concepts, not as liabilities, not as footnotes in divorce proceedings. As people. 3 years earlier, Damian Blackwood had been untouchable. At 35, he was already spoken of as inevitable. Tech magazines called him a visionary. Forbes declared him unstoppable. Wall Street analysts predicted his company would dominate the next decade. Blackwood Dynamics didn't chase attention. It ran quietly beneath the world's systems, its algorithms directing cloud infrastructure, financial models, medical triage tools, and transportation grids. Damien called it optimization. Others called it control. Sophia Laurent first saw him at a Stanford AI ethics panel. She was 29, fresh off her doctorate. Her research focused on algorithmic bias and systemic harm. She believed technology should protect life, not gamble with it. Her dissertation had exposed flaws in predictive policing models, revealing how systems marketed as objective were actually reinforcing historical prejudices. She'd been invited to the panel as a token critic, someone to provide balance, ask uncomfortable questions, then be dismissed by more powerful voices. Damien was the keynote speaker. He stood on stage in a suit that cost more than her rent, confident, magnetic, ruthless. His presentation was flawless. Charts showing efficiency gains, testimonials from satisfied clients, projections that promised a better future. He fielded questions like a prizefighter, deflecting weak punches and countering strong ones with charm and data. The room adored him. Until Sophia raised her hand. "What happens," she asked calmly, "when your algorithms decide who lives and who dies in a self-driving car?" The silence was instant. Students shifted in their seats, professors leaned forward, the moderator's pen froze mid-note. Damien met her gaze without flinching. "We don't decide," he said, "we optimize, we predict." Sophia didn't stop there. She pressed him, "What does optimization mean when the variables are human lives? Who determines the value of a child versus an elderly person? A wealthy passenger versus a minimum wage pedestrian? A single mother versus a CEO?" She exposed edge cases, forced him to confront the moral fog behind probability models, made him admit that someone somewhere had written code that assigned worth to people based on incomplete data. The audience leaned forward, something electric sparked between them. It wasn't hostility, it was recognition. Two people who saw the world differently, but with equal clarity. Afterward, he found her near the exit, surrounded by students who wanted to continue the conversation. He waited patiently until they dispersed. "Coffee," he said. "Not an invitation, a statement." Coffee became dinners. Dinners became long walks through the city at midnight, arguing philosophy and ethics under streetlights. Damien challenged her assumptions. Sophia refused to be impressed by his wealth or status. He found that intoxicating. She found his mind fascinating, even when she disagreed with everything he said. 6 months later, they married on his vineyard beneath a sky full of stars. The press loved it, the visionary and the conscience, power and principle, beauty and brilliance. Headlines wrote themselves: "Tech Titan weds AI ethics expert. Blackwood finds his moral compass. Love story of the decade." For a while, it worked. Sophia joined Blackwood Dynamics' ethics board. She reviewed projects, vetoed dangerous proposals, pushed for transparency. Damien funded her research. They debated speed versus safety late into the night, their arguments equal parts intellectual sparring and foreplay. They built something together, or so she thought. Then she got pregnant. The ultrasound revealed triplets. Damien stared at the screen in the darkened room, watching 3 tiny heartbeats flicker like Morse code. Something like awe crossed his face. 3 heirs, he said, a legacy. Sophia should have recognized the word choice. Heirs, not children, not lives, assets to inherit an empire. But as her belly grew, the distance between them widened. Board meetings replaced dinners, flights replaced conversations. He stopped asking how she felt, stopped touching her stomach, stopped coming home before midnight. When he did return, he was distracted, answering emails during breakfast, taking calls during moments that used to be theirs. At 20 weeks, she started bleeding. She called Damien from the emergency room, her voice shaking as doctors rushed around her, monitors beeping urgent warnings. "Handle it," he said. "I'll be back in 3 days." He was in Tokyo, finalizing a deal worth $800 million. Handle it. As if pregnancy complications were a logistical problem to solve. At 28 weeks, doctors rushed her into surgery. Bright lights, voices overlapping, fear closing in. Someone counted backward from 10. The world went dark. She woke in the ICU, tubes in her arms, machines accusing her with every beep. Her body felt wrong, empty, violated, broken. A nurse appeared beside her bed. "Your Barbies are in the NICU," the nurse said gently. "They're fighters." Sophia couldn't move, couldn't speak. Tears slid sideways across her temples. Damien arrived 4 days later. He stood in the NICU, staring at 3 impossibly small bodies in plastic incubators. Tubes and wires everywhere, monitors tracking every breath. Arya, Kai, and Rowan, each weighing less than 3 pounds, their skin translucent, their futures uncertain. "They're small," he said. Sophia, exhausted beyond measure, whispered from her wheelchair. "They're alive." Damien nodded, then left to take a call. 2 weeks later, divorce papers arrived. Irreconcilable differences, emotional instability. She signed. Because survival demanded it. Because fighting him would have cost energy she needed for her children. Because sometimes strength looks like surrender. She kept the Barbies. If you're still watching, you already know this isn't where she breaks. This is where she begins. The settlement was generous. Damien's lawyers had been efficient, clinical, thorough. Child support arrived like clockwork. But Sophia refused the penthouse, refused the luxury vehicles, refused everything that felt like hush money. She moved into a small Mission District apartment. Loud, imperfect, alive. The building smelled like cooking from 6 different cultures. Neighbors played music at all hours. Children shouted in hallways. It was chaotic and beautiful and real. The first year after the divorce had been survival mode. 3 premature Barbies meant constant doctor visits, therapy appointments, monitoring for developmental delays. Arya had needed oxygen for the first 6 months. Kai had struggled with feeding, requiring specialized bottles and careful positioning. Rowan had been the smallest, the most fragile, spending an extra week in the NICU after his siblings came home. Sophia had learned to function on 3 hours of sleep. She'd mastered the art of nursing while typing, of making conference calls while rocking a crying infant, of reading research papers at 2 a.m. while monitoring breathing patterns. Her mother had flown in from Boston, staying for 3 months, helping with the endless cycle of feeding, changing, soothing, sleeping. "How are you doing this?" her mother had asked one night, watching Sophia coordinate 3 feeding schedules with military precision. "I don't have a choice," Sophia had replied. But that wasn't entirely true. She'd had choices. She could have accepted more money from Damien, hired full-time help, focused solely on motherhood. She could have let bitterness consume her, let the betrayal define her, let trauma become her identity. Instead, she chose to build. The newsletter started small, 500 subscribers, mostly academics and activists who'd followed her research. She wrote about facial recognition bias in law enforcement, about how algorithms denied mortgages to qualified applicants in historically redlined neighborhoods, about how automated hiring tools screened out women and minorities. Her writing was different from academic papers, direct, accessible, urgent. She used real examples, told human stories, connected technical decisions to lived consequences. Within 6 months, she had 10,000 subscribers. Within a year, 50,000. Companies started reaching out, not to hire her to defend themselves, to challenge her findings, to threaten legal action if she didn't retract specific claims. She documented every threat, published them, let the world see how power responded to accountability. The first employee she hired was Marcus Chen, a former Google engineer who'd quit after his concerns about biased algorithms were ignored. He'd read her newsletter religiously, recognized a kindred spirit. "I'll work for free," he'd offered during their first phone call. "I can't pay much," Sophia had warned, "but I won't let you work for free. Everyone deserves to be valued." She paid him what she could from her consulting fees. He moved to San Francisco, worked from coffee shops, helped her audit algorithms pro bono for nonprofits and community organizations. The second hire was Keisha Williams, a civil rights lawyer who specialized in discrimination cases. She'd seen Sophia speak at a conference, been impressed by the rigor of her arguments. "I want to fight this legally," Keisha had said, "make companies liable for algorithmic harm." Together, they built the framework that would become Law and Ethics Foundation: technical audits, legal analysis, public accountability. Their first major case involved a healthcare algorithm that consistently rated Black patients as less urgent than white patients with identical symptoms. Sophia had obtained the data through a whistleblower, analyzed it meticulously, published the findings with careful legal review. The hospital system had threatened to sue. Then patients started coming forward, documenting delays in care, sharing stories of pain dismissed, symptoms ignored, emergencies downgraded. The hospital settled quietly, changed the algorithm, implemented oversight. And Sophia's reputation shifted from critic to force. By the time the triplets turned 2, Law and Ethics had a team of 12. By 3, they'd opened their first real office. By 4, they were consulted by governments and cited in court cases. All while Sophia balanced bedtime stories with board meetings, playground visits with congressional testimony, birthday parties with book launches. "Mom," Kai asked one morning, watching Sophia prepare for a video conference while simultaneously managing 3 breakfasts, "are we going to be rich?" Sophia smiled, pausing to ruffle his hair. "Not just rich," she said, "unstoppable." And she meant it. 3 years changed everything. Law and Ethics no longer lived in a cramped apartment or late-night emails sent between feedings and exhaustion. It occupied 2 full floors of a glass and steel building south of Market Street, sunlight pouring across whiteboards filled with models that didn't trade human lives for efficiency. The office buzzed with purposeful energy. Developers debugged fairness algorithms. Lawyers reviewed contracts for discriminatory clauses. Researchers published papers that forced companies to change policies. They'd successfully challenged lending practices, hiring tools, and criminal justice software. Governments consulted them. Universities cited them. Tech companies feared them. Sophia Laurent walked through the space every morning at 7:15 sharp, coffee in hand, hair tied back, blazer crisp. Her heels clicked with purpose, but never with arrogance. People didn't snap to attention when she entered. They smiled, they nodded, they trusted her. Trust was her currency. The world had noticed. If you're watching this unfold, you already know there's no coming back from this moment. Governments consulted her before implementing new surveillance systems. Universities invited her to keynote conferences. Journalists called her the conscience of modern AI. Startups reshaped their products just to earn her approval seal. Investors waited months for meetings she didn't rush. Sophia never raised her voice. She didn't need to. Her children were older now. Arya asked too many questions and hated being wrong. She corrected adults when they misspoke, challenged teachers who gave incomplete answers, and defended her brothers with ferocious loyalty. She was brilliant, stubborn, and unafraid. Kai memorized transit maps for fun. He could navigate the entire Bay Area system from memory, knew which routes connected where, understood timetables with mathematical precision. He spoke 3 languages and was teaching himself a 4th. His teachers called him gifted. Sophia called him careful. Rowan collected broken electronics and took them apart on the living room floor, leaving trails of screws behind like breadcrumbs. He hummed while he worked, lost in the mechanics of how things functioned. He couldn't always explain what he was doing, but his hands understood. He fixed Sophia's phone once, fixed the neighbor's radio, fixed a broken watch he'd found at a park. They knew nothing about Damien Blackwood. Not his name, not his face, not his empire. Sophia kept it that way. Until the Apex Gala invitation arrived. The gala was Damien's crown jewel. Every year, Blackwood Dynamics hosted it to announce partnerships, unveil projections, and quietly remind the world who controlled the infrastructure beneath their lives. Politicians attended to be seen. Billionaires came to network. Celebrities arrived for publicity. Media covered it breathlessly. It was theater disguised as philanthropy. Damien stood on the balcony of his penthouse overlooking the city, champagne untouched in his hand. The skyline glittered beneath him, obedient and bright. From this height, San Francisco looked like a circuit board, organized, efficient. His assistant hovered nearby, tablet glowing in the evening light. "Guest list confirmations are in," she said. Damien didn't turn around. "And Laurent?" he asked casually. "Confirmed," she said, "front row." A smile curved his mouth. Good. He hadn't seen Sophia in 3 years, not in person. He'd followed her rise the way one tracks a distant storm, aware but unconcerned. Ethics boards were fashionable now, useful for optics, harmless. Companies hired consultants, ignored their recommendations, then pointed to advisory boards as proof of good intentions. Sophia Laurent ethics had grown larger than he expected, yes, but ultimately she was playing a game she couldn't win. Ethics didn't move markets, principles didn't drive stock prices, morality didn't scale. He'd built an empire on efficiency, she'd built a reputation on restraint. He assumed she'd arrive alone, polite, professional, quietly humbled by the scale of what he'd built. The gala would remind her who won. The morning of the gala, Sophia had woken at dawn with clarity she hadn't felt in years. She knew what she was about to do, knew the risks, knew it might backfire, might damage her reputation, might make her look vindictive or unstable. But she also knew her children deserved to exist without being hidden. She'd prepared them carefully. Over breakfast, while they ate cereal and argued about whose turn it was to pick the movie, she'd explained where they were going. "We're going to a party tonight," she'd said. "A fancy one. You'll need to dress up and be on your best behavior." Aria had looked up immediately. What kind of party? "A work party, for very important people who think they understand the world." "Do they?" Kai had asked. Sophia had smiled. "We'll find out." She'd chosen their outfits with care. Nothing too formal, nothing that would make them uncomfortable. Aria's burgundy dress had pockets, essential for a child who collected interesting things. Kai's tie was clip-on, recognizing his sensory preferences. Rowan's bow tie matched his shoes, a detail that made him feel special. In the car on the way to the gala, Rowan had asked the question that mattered most. "Mom, are we going to meet our dad?" The other two had gone still. They'd never asked directly before, sensing it was complicated, trusting Sophia would tell them when the time was right. Sophia had pulled over, turned to face them in the back seat. "Yes," she'd said, "you are." "What's he like?" Aria had asked, her voice smaller than usual. Sophia had considered her answer carefully. She could have said many things, some true, some fair, some bitter. She chose honesty. "He's brilliant, he's powerful, he's used to getting what he wants, and he doesn't know you exist, not really, not the way you deserve to be known." "Will he like us?" Kai had asked. "I don't know," Sophia had admitted, "but it doesn't matter. You're not here to be liked, you're here to be seen." That conversation had sustained her through the entrance, through the stairs, through the confrontation that followed. Crystal chandeliers cascaded light across marble floors. A string quartet played near the entrance while servers glided between guests with precision. Ice sculptures melted slowly at strategic intervals. Champagne flowed, jewelry sparkled, laughter echoed off vaulted ceilings. Blackwood Dynamics banners rose like monuments. Damien moved through the room, shaking hands, collecting praise. Record profits, unprecedented expansion, unmatched influence. Senators congratulated him, CEOs sought advice, investors pitched partnerships. He accepted it all with practiced humility, the kind that looks genuine but costs nothing. Then the doors opened again. The room didn't react at first. Then heads turned. Sophia Laurent stepped inside. She wore deep sapphire, tailored and understated, fabric catching the light with quiet confidence. No diamonds, no excess, just elegance that didn't need to announce itself. Her hair was loose, soft waves framing a face that hadn't hardened with bitterness, but sharpened with clarity. She wasn't alone. 3 children walked beside her. Not toddlers, not Barbies. Children old enough to be seen. Aria wore a burgundy dress with small flats, her dark hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. She scanned the room like a strategist assessing terrain, taking in exits, counting faces, measuring distances. Her hand held Sophia's with confidence. Kai adjusted his tie, eyes flicking to architectural details overhead, the chandelier's structure, the ceiling's height, the acoustics of the space. He walked with measured steps, observing everything, commenting on nothing. Rowan clutched Sophia's other hand, wide-eyed but steady. His bow tie sat slightly crooked. His shoes were polished but scuffed at the toes. He stared at the ice sculptures with wonder, mouth slightly open, temporarily forgetting where he was. A ripple moved through the crowd. Whispers followed. Who are they? Laurent brought children. Is this appropriate? Damien froze. His champagne glass paused halfway to his lips. The conversation around him faded. The room seemed to tilt. He stared, mind racing through calculations. Ages, features, timing, he counted backward. 3 years, divorce, hospital. The pieces assembled themselves into an impossible truth. No, but there they were. 3 children, dark hair, sharp eyes, his features reflected in smaller faces. Sophia met his gaze across the room. She smiled. Not sweet, not cruel, complete. Then they walked forward. Each step echoed louder than the music. Conversations stopped, phones appeared. Security guards shifted nervously, unsure whether to intervene. Damien recovered quickly, years of control snapping back into place. He straightened his jacket, pasted on a smile meant for shareholders and cameras. Sophia, he said smoothly, approaching her with practiced ease, didn't expect company. She looked down at Rowan, then back at Damien. You invited me, she said. I brought my life. Aria stepped forward, extending her hand with confidence that belied her age. Hi, she said clearly, I'm Aria. Kai followed, voice quiet but steady. Kai. Rowan whispered his name, pressing closer to Sophia. Damien's smile didn't move, but something flickered behind his eyes. This is highly inappropriate, he said under his breath. Sophia leaned in just enough for him to hear. So is leaving me bleeding in a hospital while you closed a deal. The words sliced clean. A nearby journalist leaned closer, phones subtly lifted. The moment was being captured, catalogued, prepared for distribution. Damien laughed lightly, projecting ease for the audience. Security will escort, he began. No, Sophia said calmly, we're exactly where we're supposed to be. She turned to the audience, her voice carrying across the suddenly silent atrium. For years, Blackwood Dynamics has talked about optimizing human outcomes, she said. Tonight, I thought we could talk about the humans behind the data. A murmur swept the room. Damien's jaw tightened. This is not on the agenda. Sophia tilted her head. Neither were my children when your systems deemed me non-essential. Silence fell heavy, unavoidable. Arya looked up at Damien with the blunt directness only children possess. You're our father, right? The word hit like a dropped glass. Father. Cameras came up openly now, the pretense of discretion abandoned. Damien opened his mouth, closed it. Sophia placed a hand on Arya's shoulder. Yes, she said gently, he is. The crowd inhaled as one. Damien's voice dropped to a harsh whisper. You're doing this publicly. Sophia met his eyes without flinching. You taught me visibility matters. She turned back to the room, addressing the crowd with calm authority. These children were born at 32 weeks. They survived because nurses fought for them, while algorithms flagged me as low priority, because I was inconvenient, because ethics don't scale well in profit models. The room was no longer a room, it was a courtroom, and Sophia was both witness and prosecutor. Someone coughed, a glass clinked, silence returned heavier than before. Damien stepped forward, attempting to regain control. This is manipulation, he said, voice sharp. Personal theatrics don't belong here. Sophia smiled softly. Neither do lies dressed as innovation. She gestured toward the stage where Damien had been scheduled to speak. I believe you were about to announce your new healthcare expansion. Damien hesitated. Go on, she said, tell them how it works. Cameras locked onto him, journalists typed frantically, the moment stretched. He spoke. Carefully, vaguely, defensively. Talked about efficiency gains, resource optimization, predictive models that improved outcomes, but the words that usually sounded visionary now felt hollow. Every phrase that promised innovation carried the weight of Sophia's question, at whose cost? Sophia listened, then nodded. Thank you. She turned to the crowd one last time. The future isn't built by those who move fastest, she said. It's built by those who refuse to leave people behind. She took her children's hands, Arya on her left, Rowan on her right, Kai between them, and walked away. The doors closed behind them with a soft click. The room erupted. Phones buzzed, tweets flew, headlines wrote themselves, journalists rushed to file stories, guests argued in tight clusters, some defended Damien, others questioned everything they'd believed about him. The gala dissolved into chaos. Damien stood frozen beneath the chandeliers, applause echoing for someone else. Outside, Sophia exhaled for the first time in years. The night air was cold and clean. The city stretched before them, lights twinkling in the distance. Sophia knelt down to eye level with her children. Mom, Kai asked, voice small, are we in trouble? Sophia smiled, pulling them close. No, she said, we're free. The morning after the gala, the world felt smaller and larger at the same time. Smaller because Damien's carefully curated empire of appearances had cracked under a single truth. Larger because Sophia's reach had expanded far beyond a single stage or a single headline. By sunrise, #Triplets reveal was trending globally. Every major news outlet carried the story. Tech blogs dissected Blackwood Dynamics algorithms. Stock analysts called emergency board meetings. Investors demanded transparency. Clients questioned contracts. Employees leaked internal documents proving Sophia's claims. The narrative had shifted irreversibly. Sophia didn't wake the children to watch it. She let them sleep, 3 small bodies curled in their shared room, proof of survival and resilience. She brewed coffee, stared out at the Mission District streets below, and let the noise of the world reach her without pulling her into it. Law and ethics, meanwhile, moved forward without pause. No press conferences, no Instagram stories, no victory dances. She had built a machine that could stand on integrity alone, and it did. Companies came to her, governments asked for guidance, and her team thrived under the framework of truth, ethics, and accountability. Donations flooded in, partnerships materialized, universities offered research grants, journalists requested interviews. She declined most of them. The work mattered more than the attention. Damien sat alone in his office for the first time in years, staring at the envelope that had started everything. The crisp paper felt heavy in his hands, not because of weight, but because of what it symbolized. He had underestimated her. He had thought visibility was control. He had thought appearances equaled loyalty. He had thought she would stay quiet, stay grateful, stay small. He had been wrong. For days he avoided the media frenzy. His publicist crafted statements. His lawyers prepared defenses. His board demanded explanations. He returned calls, made appearances, smiled when cameras were on him, but none of it restored the sense of inevitability he once carried. Damien had learned something very real. Power without respect is fragile, and influence without trust is temporary. Meanwhile, Sophia balanced her expanding empire with her children. She continued to teach them the routines that mattered: kindness, consistency, curiosity, breakfast together every morning, homework help every evening, bedtime stories that lingered. Arya's questions never stopped. Why do people lie? What makes something fair? How do you know who to trust? Kai's observation skills sharpened. He noticed patterns others missed, predicted outcomes before they happened, asked questions that revealed deeper understanding. Rowan's laughter remained irrepressible. He found joy in small things: fixing broken toys, making paper airplanes, collecting interesting rocks. His innocence reminded Sophia what she was protecting. They were growing into brilliant, confident, and grounded children, the truest measure of her success. Within the week, Damien's lawyers contacted Sophia's team. He wanted to meet the children. Not for publicity, not for damage control, just to meet them. Sophia considered refusing. She had every right, every reason. He'd abandoned them when they needed him most. He'd prioritized deals over their survival. He'd signed away his rights without hesitation. But she looked at her children and realized the choice wasn't about him. It was about them. She signed the custody papers. First visits were carefully structured, neutral spaces, timed pickups, boundaries clearly communicated. Sophia remained firm but patient, showing him that presence was more important than performative gestures. The first meeting happened at a park. Damien arrived early, packing near a bench, rehearsing words that felt inadequate. When Sophia's car pulled up, his heart hammered against his ribs. Rowan ran to him first, arms wide, no hesitation. Children forgive easily when given the chance. Arya approached cautiously, measuring the distance between them. She extended her hand formally. "Hi." Kai observed from several feet away, evaluating character before forming judgment. He didn't speak, just watched. Damien knelt down, eye level with Rowan. "Hi," he said softly. And for the first time in his life, Damien Blackwood had to learn humility in real time. He learned which foods the children liked. Arya preferred savory over sweet. Kai ate methodically, finishing one thing before starting another. Rowan would only eat macaroni if it was shaped like dinosaurs. He learned which bedtime stories soothed them. Arya liked adventures with strong heroines. Kai wanted facts about space and engineering. Rowan requested the same story every night, a tale about a truck that could fly. He learned that consistency mattered more than charm. Showing up on time, keeping promises, listening without distractions, these weren't strategies, they were requirements. Mistakes were inevitable. He forgot Kai's allergy to strawberries. He scheduled a business call during Rowan's soccer game. He missed Arya's school presentation because a meeting ran late. But he corrected them earnestly. Apologies replaced arrogance. Attention replaced transactions. He showed up, he tried, he failed, he tried again. Slowly, relationships built themselves, not out of obligation, but out of effort. Meanwhile, law and ethics expanded globally. Offices opened in London, Tokyo, and Sydney. Ethical AI became the standard companies sought, not the exception. Sophia's reputation grew not as someone who fought, but as someone who led with unshakable principles. She testified before Congress about algorithmic accountability. She advised the European Union on digital rights. She partnered with universities to develop curriculum around ethical technology. She published a book that became required reading in computer science programs. But she never forgot where it started. 3 Barbies fighting for life, while the world moved on without them. 2 years later, the triplets were 5. Damien's role in their lives was steady but smaller than he'd expected. He wasn't the primary parent. He wasn't the one they called first when scared. He wasn't the center of their world. But he was present. He cooked pancakes on Sunday mornings, often burned. He attended school events, sitting quietly in the back. He read bedtime stories when it was his turn, stumbling over voices but trying. He learned the little details that made children feel known. Arya's favorite color changed monthly. Kai collected maps. Rowan could identify any vehicle by its sound. One evening, after a school play where Rowan had played a tree with enthusiastic commitment, Damien lingered in the parking lot while Sophia buckled the children into their car seats. "You never thanked me," he said quietly. Sophia straightened, closing the car door gently. "For what?" "For protecting them, raising them, letting me back in." Sophia considered this. Years ago, she might have been tempted to savor it. Now she felt something steadier. "You don't deserve this," she said softly. Damien nodded slowly. "No, but they do," he replied. The children ran between them, laughter bridging cracks left by past betrayals. In that moment, Damien understood. He could rebuild relationships, but he could never undo the past. He could, however, contribute to something real. Years passed in the way they do when you're building something that matters, quickly when you're looking back, slowly when you're living through the hard moments. The first year after the gala was the hardest for Damien. His board demanded explanations he couldn't give. Shareholders questioned his judgment. Competitors seized opportunities in his distraction. Employees wondered if the company that had prided itself on innovation could survive a crisis rooted in humanity. He sat through countless meetings where his own words were quoted back to him. "We optimize outcomes, but whose outcomes? For whom? At what cost?" Questions he dismissed as philosophical exercises suddenly demanded concrete answers. The company implemented reforms, real ones. Ethics boards gained veto power. Algorithms were audited by independent third parties. Transparency reports became mandatory. It was painful, expensive, and humbling. Unnecessary. Meanwhile, Sophia's world expanded in ways she'd never imagined. Law and ethics became the gold standard. Companies competed for her certification. Governments sought her counsel. Students applied to work for her in numbers that overwhelmed her hiring capacity. But success didn't change her morning routine. She still woke at 5:30 a.m., still made breakfast for 3 children who grew taller every month, still helped with homework, negotiated bedtime, kissed scraped knees, and listened to stories about playground politics with the same attention she gave congressional testimony. Arya became the child who asked impossible questions. Why do some people have more than others? What makes a law fair? How do you know if you're doing the right thing? Sophia answered honestly, never simplifying beyond what respect demanded. Kai became the child who noticed everything. He pointed out patterns in traffic lights, predicted weather from cloud formations, explained why certain buildings stood stronger than others. His teachers called him gifted. Sophia called him observant. Rowan became the child who fixed things. Broken toys, loose hinges, tangled headphones. He approached problems with patient curiosity, taking things apart to understand how they worked, then putting them back together better than before. Damien learned their rhythms slowly. He learned that Arya needed time to process before bedtime, that rushing her through the evening routine led to tears and resistance. He learned that Kai preferred silence in the car, using the time to think rather than fill space with conversation. He learned that Rowan needed physical affection, hugs, high fives, a hand on his shoulder to feel connected. These weren't insights he read in parenting books. They were lessons learned through failure, correction, and patience. One Saturday, Damien took all 3 children to the Science Museum. It was his idea, no prompting from Sophia, no court-ordered visitation, just a father wanting to spend time with his children. Arya led them to the robotics exhibit, asking the docent questions that made the volunteer pause and think. Kai spent 30 minutes at the planetary display, memorizing orbital periods and gravitational constants. Rowan found the section on simple machines and became fascinated with pulleys, levers, and inclined planes. Damien watched them, realizing he was witnessing the early formation of who they would become, not extensions of himself, not heirs to an empire, people, unique, brilliant, complicated people. That night when he dropped them back at Sophia's apartment, he lingered at the door. "Thank you," he said. Sophia raised an eyebrow. "For what?" "For not making it easy, for holding me accountable, for making me earn this." She nodded slowly. They deserved that standard. They did, he agreed. They still do. Years accumulated like that, small moments building toward understanding. Law and Ethics rang the Nasdaq bell when the triplets were 8. Arya wore a suit jacket and spoke confidently to reporters, already comfortable in front of cameras. Kai stood quietly, observing the trading floor with fascination, asking Sophia later about market mechanisms and economic systems. Rowan waved at cameras with unfiltered joy, finding wonder in the pageantry of it all. Damien watched from the visitors' gallery, a witness to a legacy that had grown beyond his control, beyond his understanding, beyond anything he'd built. Sophia stood on the platform, hand on the ceremonial button, surrounded by her team, people who'd believed in her vision when it was just late-night essays and borrowed conviction. She looked up at the balcony, caught Damien's eye, and nodded once. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, acknowledgement. He nodded back. Blackwood Dynamics had survived the scandal, but barely. Reforms were implemented. Ethics boards gained real authority. Transparency became mandatory. The company endured, but its soul had changed. Damien no longer ran it the same way. He couldn't. Not after seeing what unchecked optimization cost. They met often now, school events, birthday parties, check-ins, but the past never fully returned. Trust had been rebuilt slowly, deliberately, and honestly. It looked different than before, smaller, more careful, but real. At Arya's 10th birthday party, held in Sophia's backyard with streamers and cake and children running everywhere, Damien sat at a picnic table, watching his daughter orchestrate games with the precision of a general. Sophia sat beside him. "She's like you," Damien said. Sophia smiled. "She's better." Damien couldn't argue. Sophia reflected on everything she had learned: resilience, patience, empathy, strategy, and the quiet power of truth. She hadn't sought revenge. She had sought justice and protection for her children. In doing so, she became a model for anyone who had ever been underestimated, silenced, or left behind. Karma didn't arrive with a loud crash. It arrived as undeniable proof. A woman who refused to disappear, 3 children alive and thriving, and a world that had to reckon with what integrity and perseverance could accomplish. The family wasn't perfect. It was earned. It was deliberate. It was strong, and that strength was more powerful than any empire Damien had built. 15 years after the gala that changed everything, Sophia Lawrence sat in her corner office overlooking San Francisco Bay. The Lawrence Ethics building had grown to occupy an entire block, its glass facade reflecting clouds that drifted lazily across an afternoon sky. She wasn't alone. Aria, now 18 and headed to Stanford in the fall, sat across from her, laptop open, working on her college essay. She was writing about ethics in technology, following in her mother's footsteps but carving her own path. Her focus was on environmental algorithms, on how AI could either save or doom the planet depending on whose interests it served. "Mom, can you read this paragraph?" Aria asked, spinning her laptop around. Sophia read carefully. The writing was sharp, analytical, unafraid. It challenged assumptions. It asked hard questions. It sounded like Aria and like her mother. "It's good," Sophia said, "really good. But here, this sentence assumes the reader already agrees with you. What if they don't?" Aria frowned, read it again, then nodded. "You're right, I need to build the argument first." "Exactly." Kai appeared in the doorway, now a quiet 16-year-old who'd grown into his observation skills. He'd spent the summer interning at Lawrence Ethics, working on data visualization projects that made complex algorithms understandable to the public. "Mom, the reporters are here for the anniversary interview," he said. Sophia checked her watch, right on time. The 15th anniversary of the gala had become a case study in business schools, a reference point in ethics courses, a defining moment in the ongoing conversation about technology and accountability. Journalists still wanted to cover it, to understand how one moment of courage had rippled outward into systemic change. But Sophia rarely gave interviews anymore. She let her work speak. Today was different. Today marked not just the gala, but 15 years of Lawrence Ethics, 15 years of her children's lives, 15 years of proof that integrity could build empires more lasting than profit. Rowan poked his head in next. At 16, he'd grown tall, still carried screwdrivers in his pocket, still fixed things compulsively. He'd recently built a working drone from recycled parts, then used it to map pollution patterns in local waterways. "Are we all doing this?" he asked. "If you want to," Sophia said, "you don't have to." The three children exchanged looks, a silent conversation refined over years of shared experience. "We'll do it," Aria decided, "but we speak for ourselves, not just as Lawrence kids." "Wouldn't have it any other way," Sophia said. The interview took place in the building's main conference room, cameras set up, lights positioned, audio checked. The journalist was young, thorough, respectful. She asked Sophia about the gala, about the decision to bring her children, about whether she'd known how it would change everything. "I knew it would change something," Sophia said. "I didn't know what, I just knew hiding from the truth, wasn't an option anymore." "Do you regret it?" "Never. Not even the scrutiny, the media attention, the way it affected your children." Sophia glanced at Aria, Kai, and Rowan, sitting together on the couch, comfortable in their own skin, confident in ways that had nothing to do with privilege and everything to do with being genuinely known. "My children grew up understanding that truth matters more than comfort, that integrity isn't optional, that standing up for what's right sometimes means standing in uncomfortable places. I don't regret teaching them that." The journalist turned to the children. What was it like, growing up as the people at the center of that story? Aria spoke first. "Honestly, for a long time we didn't fully understand what had happened. We were 4 years old. We just knew Mom took us to a fancy party, we met our dad, and then everything got really weird for a while." "When did you understand?" "Gradually, around 8 or 9, we started asking questions. Mom never lied to us, never made Dad into a villain, but she also never pretended the past was simple." Kai added quietly, "She taught us that people are complicated, that someone can make terrible choices and still have the capacity to change. That forgiveness isn't about forgetting, it's about deciding what kind of person you want to be. Do you have a relationship with your father now? Rowan answered this one. Yeah, it's not perfect. It's not what it would have been if he'd been there from the start, but it's real. He shows up, he listens, he tries, that counts for something. Your mother built an empire on holding powerful people accountable. How did she handle accountability in her own family? The three children smiled at each other. She was harder on herself than anyone, Arya said. Still is. She apologizes when she makes mistakes. She admits when she doesn't know something. She asks for our input on decisions that affect us. She treats us like people, not possessions. The journalist turned back to Sophia. You've been called many things: pioneer, disruptor, conscience of Silicon Valley. How do you see yourself? Sophia thought carefully. I'm a mother who refused to let her children be erased. Everything else followed from that. That's it. That's everything. After the interview, after the cameras were packed and the journalists left, Sophia walked with her children to the parking garage. Chinese food, Rowan suggested. Thai, Arya countered. We had Thai last week, Kai pointed out. Democracy, Sophia declared. Vote. Thai won 2-1. They drove through the city as the sun set, painting everything gold. Sophia's phone buzzed with messages, board members with questions, reporters requesting follow-ups, organizations seeking partnerships. She silenced it. Right now, she was just a mother having dinner with her children. Later that night, after dropping the kids at home, Sophia met Damien for coffee. They did this occasionally now, not dates, not reconciliation, just two people who shared children and history, navigating co-parenting with more grace than either had managed 15 years ago. The interview went well, he asked. It was fine, the kids were great. They always are, he paused. I watched the footage, the journalist posted a clip. And Arya sounds like you, Kai has your precision, Rowan has your optimism. They're their own people. I know, but they have the best parts of you. Sophia didn't respond to that. Some compliments didn't need acknowledgement. How's Blackwood? She asked instead. Profitable, ethical, actually ethical, not just marketing ethical. We lost some clients when we started requiring real audits, but we gained different ones, better ones. That must have been hard. It was necessary. He met her eyes. You taught me that. I don't think I taught you anything. I think you learned it when the cost of not learning became too high. Fair. They sat in comfortable silence, sipping coffee, watching the city move around them. Do you ever think about what would have happened if I hadn't sent that invitation? Damien asked. Every day, Sophia admitted. Sometimes I wonder if we would have found another way to this place. Other times I know we wouldn't have. You needed to be confronted. I needed to stop hiding. I regret it, you know, all of it. The hospital, the divorce, missing those years. I knows you do. Does that matter? Sophia considered. It matters that you learned. It matters that you changed. It matters that you show up now. The regret itself, that's yours to carry, not mine. Damien nodded. Thank you. For what? For not making them hate me. You could have. I could have, Sophia agreed, but that would have hurt them, not you. Everything I did was for them. I know. As Sophia drove home that night, she thought about the envelope that had arrived 15 years ago. The invitation meant to humiliate her, to remind her of her place, to put her back in the box Damien had built. Instead, it had freed her. Freed her from silence, freed her from shame, freed her from the idea that protecting her children meant hiding them. She'd built law and ethics on that freedom, built a life, a legacy, a framework for accountability that extended far beyond her personal story. But more than that, she'd raised 3 humans who understood their worth, who questioned power, who refused to accept systems that harmed people just because they were efficient. That was the real victory. Not the gala, not the headlines, not the empire. 3 people who would make the world better simply by existing in it honestly. At home, the kids were already in bed. Sophia checked on each of them, a habit she'd never broken, even now that they were teenagers who rolled their eyes at her overprotectiveness. Aria, laptop still open, research tabs about climate algorithms covering her screen. Kai, headphones on, listening to something complex and mathematical. Rowan, surrounded by dismantled electronics, a satisfied smile on his sleeping face. Sophia stood in the doorway of each room, feeling what she felt every night, overwhelming gratitude that they were here, that they were whole, that they had survived everything designed to break them. She thought about the doctors who'd given them slim chances, the algorithms that had flagged her as low priority, the systems that had valued efficiency over her life, the man who had walked away when she needed him most. They had all underestimated what survival could build. And standing there in the quiet of her home, surrounded by evidence of the life she'd fought for, Sophia Lawrence smiled. Not because she'd won, but because she'd built something more important than victory. She'd built truth, she'd built integrity, she'd built 3 human beings who would carry both into a future that desperately needed them. And that, she thought, was the only revenge worth having. The story of Sophia Lawrence and her triplets became required reading in business ethics courses. The gala became a case study in corporate accountability. Lawrence ethics became the gold standard for algorithmic fairness. But the real story was smaller, quieter, more personal. It was about a woman who refused to let her children be erased. It was about 3 Barbies who survived against terrible odds. It was about a man who learned, too late for some things, just in time for others, that power without humanity is just elaborate emptiness. It was about the truth that some victories aren't loud, they're lived. One breakfast at a time, one bedtime story at a time, one moment of showing up when it would be easier to walk away. That's the story that mattered, that's the story that lasted, that's the story that changed everything. Years later, when the triplets were teenagers, Aria asked Sophia about the gala. "Were you scared?" she asked. Sophia paused, considering. "Terrified," she admitted. "Then why did you do it?" Sophia looked at her daughter, brilliant, fierce, uncompromising. "Because some truths are more important than fear, because you deserve to exist in the world without shame, because silence protects the wrong people." Aria nodded, understanding settling into her bones. That night, Sophia stood on her balcony overlooking the city. Lawrence Ethics headquarters glowed in the distance. The children slept safely in their rooms. The world continued spinning, slightly better for what she'd built. She thought about the envelope that had arrived years ago, the invitation meant to humiliate, the moment that became a reckoning. And she smiled. Not because she'd won, but because she'd built something worth protecting. Something that would outlast any empire. Something called truth. If you asked Sophia what she'd learned from everything, the marriage, the betrayal, the birth, the gala, the building, she would tell you it came down to a few essential truths. First, you can't hide pain. It either consumes you or transforms you, but it never disappears. Sophia had chosen transformation. Instead of letting betrayal define her, she'd let it fuel her. Every algorithm she audited, every system she challenged, every person she protected, they all carried echoes of her own experience. Second, children deserve truth, not protection from it. The biggest gift Sophia gave Aria, Kai. And Rowan wasn't shielding them from harsh realities. It was teaching them how to navigate those realities with integrity. They knew their father had failed them. They also knew he was trying now. They understood both things could be true simultaneously. Third, power without accountability destroys everything it touches. Damien had built an empire on efficiency and optimization, but he'd forgotten that numbers represented people. Sophia had spent her career forcing powerful people to remember that fundamental truth. Fourth, revenge is empty, but justice is sustaining. Sophia could have destroyed Damien at the gala, could have used her platform to eviscerate him publicly, to make him pay for every moment of abandonment, but that would have been about him. Instead, she'd focused on her children, on truth, on building something that mattered. That choice had made all the difference. Fifth, some victories take time to understand. The gala had felt chaotic, dangerous, possibly reckless. Years later, it looked like courage. The brutal honesty that had terrified her in the moment became the foundation everything else was built on. If you asked Damien what he'd learned, he would tell you that he'd spent his entire life optimizing for the wrong variables. He'd optimized for profit, for growth, for market dominance, but he'd failed to account for what made any of it worthwhile. He'd built systems that could predict consumer behavior but couldn't understand human need. He'd created algorithms that processed millions of transactions but missed the single heartbeat that mattered. The gala had shattered his illusions, but it was the years afterward, the slow, humbling process of learning to be a father, that had actually changed him. He learned that presence couldn't be optimized. You couldn't schedule quality time and expect it to perform. You had to show up consistently, even when it was inconvenient, even when results weren't immediate, even when your children didn't seem to notice. He learned that apologies required action, not eloquence. Saying sorry meant nothing if behavior didn't change. His children taught him that through simple, devastating honesty. You said you'd come to my game. You promised you'd call. You weren't there. He learned that love was the least efficient thing in the universe, and the only thing that actually mattered. If you asked the triplets what they'd learned, each would tell you something different. Arya would say she learned that asking questions is more important than having answers, that challenging authority isn't disrespectful, it's necessary, that you can be kind and fierce simultaneously. Kai would say he learned that patterns reveal truth, but they don't determine it, that observation is powerful, but action is essential, that being right isn't the same as being helpful. Rowan would say he learned that broken things can be fixed, but some damage changes what something becomes, that fixing isn't about restoration, it's about reimagining, that the best solutions often come from understanding failure. All three would agree on one thing: their mother taught them that surviving isn't enough. You have to decide what you're surviving for. The story of Sophia Laurent and her triplets spread far beyond business schools and ethics courses. It became a touchstone for anyone who'd ever been underestimated, for every single mother balancing impossible demands, for every person told their concerns didn't matter, for everyone fighting systems designed to silence them. Sophia received thousands of letters over the years, from women who'd left abusive relationships, from whistleblowers who'd risked everything to tell the truth, from parents fighting for children the world wanted to ignore. She kept every letter, read each one, responded when she could. Because she understood something fundamental, her story wasn't special, it was just visible. Millions of people fought similar battles every day without cameras, without headlines, without recognition. The gala had simply made one battle impossible to ignore. On Arya, Kai, and Rowan's 18th birthday, Sophia gave each of them a letter she'd written years earlier. She'd updated them annually, adding reflections as the children grew, as her understanding deepened, as time revealed patterns she couldn't have seen in the moment. The letters were different, tailored to each child's personality, addressing their specific strengths and struggles, but they all contained the same core message: you are not accidents, you are not outcomes of optimization. You are fully human, completely valuable, deserving of space in this world exactly as you are. Arya cried reading hers. Kai went quiet. Rowan asked if he could keep it with him always. That night, after the birthday celebration ended, after friends left and decorations came down, the four of them sat on the balcony watching the city lights. "What happens now?" Rowan asked. "You grow up," Sophia said. "You make your own choices, you build your own lives. What if we fail? Then you learn, then you try again, just like I did, just like everyone does." "What if we want to do something different than you?" Kai asked. "Good," Sophia said. "You should. The world doesn't need 3 more versions of me. It needs you, whatever that becomes." "What if we mess up really badly?" Arya pressed. Sophia looked at her oldest daughter, fierce and brilliant, and still learning that perfection isn't the goal. "Then you'll still be mine, you'll still be loved, you'll still deserve another chance. The biggest mistakes I ever made came from thinking I had to be perfect to deserve love. I don't want that for you." They sat together as the sky darkened, San Francisco spreading out below them, full of possibility and complication and infinite human stories unfolding simultaneously. Somewhere in that city, Damien was probably working late, still optimizing, still building, but also still learning, still showing up for Sunday dinners, still trying to be the father he should have been from the beginning. Somewhere in that city, algorithms were making decisions about people's lives. Some of those algorithms had been audited by law and ethics. Some had been fixed. Some were still broken, waiting for someone to care enough to check. Somewhere in that city, a woman was bleeding in a hospital while doctors debated priorities. A child was being screened out of opportunities by automated systems. A person was being reduced to variables that couldn't capture their humanity. The work wasn't finished, it would never be finished. But that was okay. Some battles aren't meant to be won once and forgotten. They're meant to be fought continuously, by each generation, in new contexts with evolving tools. Law and ethics would continue long after Sophia stepped back. The frameworks she'd built, the standards she'd established, the culture she'd cultivated, these would persist. New leaders would emerge, new challenges would arise, the work would adapt and endure. Arya would probably join that fight in her own way on her own terms. Kai might approach it differently, through data and analysis and visualization that made invisible harms visible. Rowan might fix broken systems the way he fixed broken electronics, patiently, persistently, with complete faith that understanding led to solutions. Or they might do something entirely different, and that would be perfect too. Because Sophia's legacy wasn't about creating copies of herself. It was about raising humans who understood their own worth and recognized it in others, who questioned systems that harmed people, who believed change was possible because they'd seen it happen. They'd watched their mother build something from nothing, watched her stand up when it was easier to stay silent, watched her demand accountability from the most powerful people in the world, watched her do it all while making them breakfast, helping with homework, and never missing a bedtime story that truly mattered. That was the real lesson. That was the actual revolution. Not that one woman had challenged a powerful man, not that one moment had changed an industry, not that one gala had become a symbol. But that survival itself could be an act of defiance, that raising children with integrity was radical, that refusing to accept harm as inevitable was revolutionary. These truths would ripple forward, through Arya's advocacy, whatever form it took, through Kai's analysis, however he applied it, through Rowan's solutions, wherever he found problems worth solving. Through every person they touched, every system they questioned, every moment they chose truth over convenience. But tonight, Sophia sat with her 3 children, alive, thriving, whole, and felt something close to peace. Not because every battle had been won, but because she'd fought the ones that mattered. And in fighting them, she taught 3 young people that they could do the same. That courage wasn't the absence of fear, it was action despite it. That justice wasn't a destination, it was a direction. That truth wasn't always comfortable, but it was always worth defending. These lessons would carry them forward, through college, careers, relationships, parenthood, through successes and failures, triumphs and defeats, moments of clarity and stretches of doubt. They would make mistakes. They would face challenges Sophia couldn't anticipate or prevent. They would encounter systems designed to reduce them to data points, to ignore their humanity, to optimize them out of existence. But they would remember this moment, this city, this woman who refused to let them be erased. And they would know bone deep that they mattered. Not because algorithms said so, not because systems validated them, not because power recognized their worth, but because they were human, because humanity itself was valuable, because existence didn't require justification or optimization or permission from systems designed by people who'd forgotten what it meant to be vulnerable. This understanding would sustain them through everything ahead, through moments when efficiency demanded sacrifice, through systems that tried to reduce them to numbers, through people who valued profit over people, speed over safety, innovation over integrity. They would remember their mother's words, spoken in countless variations throughout their childhood. You matter. Your existence is not a problem to be solved. Your humanity is not optional. And remembering, they would resist, they would question, they would demand better, not because they were angry or bitter or broken, but because they'd been raised by someone who showed them what was possible when you refused to accept harm as inevitable. That was Sophia Loren's true legacy. Not the company, not the certification standards, not the laws changed or algorithms fixed. Those mattered, but they were means, not ends. Her legacy was 3 humans who would carry forward the radical belief that people deserve protection, that systems could be changed, that power could be challenged, and that truth, uncomfortable, inconvenient, essential truth, was always worth defending. But because they were human. And that had always been enough. If this story inspired you, imagine what one determined person can do when they refuse to be silenced. Hit the like button, subscribe for more incredible comebacks, and share this story with someone who needs to see that truth, integrity, and resilience always win.